All right, welcome everyone to the very first episode of the Sunset Connection, where we explore the rich history, vibrant present, and exciting future of San Francisco's Sunset District. I'm your host, Jessica Ho, and I couldn't be more thrilled to start this journey with you. Before we dive in, let me share why I created this podcast. First, I'm currently taking a class at City College. Shout out to Professor Cecil. And when I was brainstorming ideas, I knew it had to be something meaningful to me. And as those who know me can attest, I absolutely love the Sunset District. For those outside of San Francisco, the Sunset might not even register on the radar. SF is known for its tourism, towering skyscrapers, and let's be honest, the not so great headlines of public safety lately. But the truth is, San Francisco is incredibly diverse. Did you know that the realtors divided the city into 89 official neighborhoods? That blows my mind. Fewer than 1 million people live here. I think we're at like 700,000. I don't know.
Something like 780?
Yeah, and yet we have 89 neighborhoods packed in a 7 by 7 square miles. And the Sunset District is where I really found my home. It's one of the 89 that I felt like I really understood, or I felt like it really understood me and accepted me for who I was, it's difficult to do. I understand. So, yeah, it always had a special place in my heart. And that's what the podcast is all about, celebrating the sunset and the people who make it so unique and so vibrant. Okay, so since this is our very first episode, I want to lay out what we're going to talk about today. We have a special guest joining us, Albert Chow, president of the People of Parkside Sunset. Albert is a business owner, a community leader, and a passionate advocate for this neighborhood. Together, we're going to take a journey through the past, present, and future of the Sunset District. And to keep things lighthearted and fun, we'll wrap things up with a little game of trivia. Sound good? All right, here we go. The Sunset District has always been one of San Francisco's most misunderstood neighborhoods. What started as foggy sand dunes has grown into a thriving, diverse community. It's home to generations of families, small businesses, and some of the city's best hidden gems. Albert, you've grown up in the Sunset, run a business here, and are raising your family in the community. Let's start at the beginning. What's your earliest memory of the Sunset District?
Hi, Jessica. Great to be here. I'm honored to be your first guest, to be on your podcast and talking of all things, this little corner of the city that we both find ourselves in. I've been here a little bit longer than you. I'm a native of San Francisco, so I'm born and raised here, but I started in North Beach, Chinatown. I was born in Chinese hospital, the same hospital as Bruce Lee. And I lived out there until the mid-'70s or late '70s. I don't quite remember exactly what year we came out here. I think it's like 77, 78. First came out to the Avenues is what we called it back then. I used to come out here because my uncle and aunt lived out here, so we would drive from North Beach, which I always thought was really far away because you had to take the
And Judah?
no, we took the Marina Boulevard freeway that goes one way to Golden Gate Bridge and the other way takes you to Park Presidio, 19th Avenue. I remember driving through the Presidio, and at that time it was a military base, a very active one. So there were soldiers and jeeps and checkpoints everywhere, and so we used to drive through that. It really makes you feel like you've stepped out of the city because Chinatown compared to an army base. And then when we come back out again, we're on the other side and it's foggy. The houses are all different. They don't look anything like anything in the North Beach. And those were my early memories is just seeing a lot of low slung homes, not much else going on, and then going to my uncle and aunt's house and playing there. And they lived at that time at 18th and Judah. They're still there. Because even then, back then, it was hard to buy another house once you had a house. And I think back then, I think the houses were like, it's going to make everybody cringe, but I think they were like 40-something thousand at the time.
Throughout the whole district?
There were some that were in the 30s, some of them in the 50,000.
Were there a lot of dunes everywhere?
No, there was. So when I finally moved out here, I lived at 44th and Quintera, and there were dunes behind St. Ignatius High School.
Wow.
There's still a big, giant mound of dunes, about 2 or 3 square blocks worth. And you could climb them, you could roll around in the sand there, and being Chinese and coming from Chinatown, my friends and we used to do bottle rocket wars out there. So we would just hide in the dunes and shoot at each other, which of course you would never be able to do that today. But that was kind of sort of fun. Riding BMX bicycles through the sand dunes. That was still a thing. Today, it's a parking lot, a soccer field, and yeah, it's just a big sports venue. What is now sitting there is used to be all dunes. It was a sports venue area for SI High School.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That's that large like soccer field behind SI. There's the Sunset Mental Health. I think they have a department or like a building out there.
That was I think already there, just to the south of that. It was just a square of sand dune. That was the last bastion of it, and it was just.
So
all the Sunset kids went there to play.
They were the last sand dunes in the Sunset.
And I don't know why that patch was just left the way it was, but it was there, and we enjoyed it. Firecrackers and BMX bicycles.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Back in those days, there wasn't a lot of Asians. There was a few. There were some Filipinos. There were some black folks that were here too, but predominantly at that time it was very Irish, very white, but slowly changing. But it was. I think that's just part of San Francisco.
When did you think you saw the change really start?
As Chinese, it became more affluent. So we took this. I think it was a natural progression. I was living in an SRO and in a small apartment in North Beach.
Oh, sorry. Explain for our listeners what is an SRO?
An SRO is a single resident occupancy room that you get to have. You don't get your own bathroom. You had a sink in the room and a closet. And you had pretty much just room for a bed.
It's like 10 by 10 feet, right?
It was on Powell and Vallejo is where I was. And it was the SRO I was born in. I don't really remember much of it. I've got photos of it. It's like a pale green room, indicative of those days. That color, I can remember sounds like walking up vinyl tile staircases that were just loud and creaky as you go up to the rooms. I don't remember what floor I was on or anything. But
how old were you when you moved out to the Sunset District?
I was about 8 or 9. Yeah.
Did you go to school out here too?
I stayed in the North Beach schools until I got to junior high. So I stayed out in the North Beach area, stayed in school there. I just had friends there. So,
right.
And my parents worked out there, so it was, we had to drive out there anyway, so dropping me off was not a big deal.
So going from an SRO in Chinatown where sometimes up to like 10 people live, which is insane, in the small cramped room.
It was just us 3.
Okay,
Mom,
good.
Dad,
Only
me.
3 of you.
Yeah.
That's good. I've heard horror stories. It's crazy. To come out to the Sunset District, do you think that was a big factor in coming out here? Was more space, or was it cheaper, or why did your family choose to come to the Sunset?
I think because when my uncle and aunt lived out here, and then I had a bunch of uncles and aunts that lived in the Richmond, but Richmond was always a premium. To live in the Richmond.
So the Richmond was nicer than the Sunset?
Yeah, it was always several $1,000s at that time more for a house in the Richmond versus the Sunset. The Sunset's bigger, and I actually, now that I've lived here so long, and I've been to both, Richmond and the Sunset, I actually prefer the Sunset. It's just, you have more breathing space. There's parking's easier, because the curb cuts, there's so little small curb cuts in the Richmond that you can't park anywhere. So the density is not as bad. It's definitely more spread out, and it's just a bigger neighborhood. So I'm totally cool with that. What I noticed the difference was I remember going into our first house and just running around like crazy because it was just this new space and it was huge. Hallways. Who ever heard of a hallway when you're coming from like the small housing in Chinatown, North Beach? So just having a room to myself, that was completely different. Having rooms downstairs, having a garage, all that just was so eye-opening to me. And the neighborhood, people were a lot friendlier.
Oh, tell me more about that. What do you mean by they were friendlier?
There was kids on the block, and at first I was nervous about playing with anybody, but they would come out on the weekends and they'd play football in the street, which you could do back then because nobody drove down 44th Avenue. They would ride bicycles, they would play games, bring out their toys, and my sisters and I would slowly get to playing with them. I had a couple of them that were in school that I knew, so it was just start playing with kids. There was a guy named Mac that was he lived on the corner at 44th and Rivera, and he used to make toy rubber band guns. He would help you build a bow and arrow set.
Was he a child or a?
No, he was an older guy.
Okay,
just like a retired old folk. He used to play with, work with the kids, and like he carved I remember he carved me a rubber band gun just because he wanted to make one. And later, like me and another kid named Aiden lived down the block. He got one too, and we started just shooting each other with rubber band guns.
That's so cute. And this is when you were like 9?
Yeah, 9, 10, 11 years old. Yeah, different dynamic. There just wasn't a lot of cars.
Right.
And we had blind intersections. They were like 4-way, no stop signs. So people just slow down, check left and right, go through. But I remember riding my bicycle all through the Sunset. It was just me and the gang.
And the only sand dunes by that time were still just the ones behind SI?
Yes, unless you want to go down to the beach.
Right.
Yeah.
So what were some misconceptions that the Sunset had when you were growing up?
I don't know, there were misconceptions or there was just a ringing of truth, which I would honestly say I liked going back to Chinatown. It was like on weekends we'd go to Chinatown to have dim sum, visit my grandma. There was a lot of hustle and bustle that I missed in Chinatown. I still do that. Sometimes I like to go into Chinatown or even to the Mission because I love that crowd feeling, that, very ethnic and very diverse crowd. And I need that every once in a while. But when I don't need it and I just want to have a nice, quiet, chill time, I'm back in my neighborhood, back to relax. Now, I think that people keep thinking of the Sunset at that time very much like they think of like the middle of the country, like a flyover area. You just go there as a bedroom community. And to some respects, that was true. But it gave you that safer childhood, I think. There was a lot of real, like, good old American stuff going on here. Just like playing baseball, we didn't do soccer back then, but, baseball, handball, kickball, basketball. There was a lot of that going on. Just a lot of much simpler fun. The neighborhoods were, like, the commercial corridors aren't what they are today. So they were just, what can I say? It was a lot of World War II veterans.
Oh, interesting.
Here. And they were the ones that were making lives for themselves, and their kids were having kids, and that's my generation. So there was a lot. So at that time, these were the guys that bought the homes after the war and the GI Bill. So I remember seeing guys with, flags tattooed on their arms and chests, anchors on their forearms, because these were former Navy guys, former Marines and Army. So there's just a lot of those people, and then also like Vietnam veterans. I saw a lot of that in our part of town.
Interesting. And they were all kind of in the Sunset District, not other places of San Francisco?
This was the biggest development. Like these houses were built in the 40s, especially as you go further out to the west to the beach. The houses were built just prior to going into the war, like 1941. And then after, of course, Pearl Harbor, all construction stopped. But immediately after 45, 46, the houses started being built in massive amounts here. And all the GIs coming back home, especially I think if you were in Pacific Theater, San Francisco was where you landed. And of course, this was a military town at that time. And there was like so many guys that came back. And they just, went through hell. And they just wanted to build a life, maybe more earnest than ever. And so they were there. So I remember seeing quite a lot of that. I even remember seeing some Jewish folks with concentration camp numbers tattooed on their arms.
Wow.
Still remember seeing that when I was a kid.
So it's almost like the Sunset was a refuge for a lot of these veterans who just came back from war. And they were some of the first residents of the Sunset District. Is that correct to say?
They were a part of a wave that came post World War II, for sure. Yeah, I saw a lot of them. And, their kids are my age now, in their 50s. That's, I don't really see that greatest generation anymore.
Right.
Many of those have passed on.
Yes. Moving on to the present, I think I want to transition with this story. So there's another person that apparently knew your mother that was running the shop.
Yes, she was tough as nails.
Okay, yeah, that's what he was saying. He was like, there was this woman, she seemed tough as nails. Is that Albert's mom?
Yep, that's right. Mariana Chow. That's my mom.
What is her name?
Mariana
Chow.
Yeah.
And so tell me, where does she live now?
So our hardware store, we had a fire just last year.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But yes, thank you. But we're building back, so we're going to continue the hardware store. We've only been there 41 years, so let's keep it going.
41 years.
Yeah.
So how long were you in the Sunset before they opened up the shop?
I've been here almost 50 years.
So for 9 years, when you guys were at 44th, you guys were living and then growing up, and then you must have been like 17, 18 when it opened up?
15.
15, okay.
Yep. So we had moved from the 44th Avenue house, and then we lived at 25th and Terraville.
Uh-huh.
So that's where we resided, and I think this piece of property came up for sale. I think we paid $200,000 plus for it, for the whole building.
Wow.
And we initially rented it out to, some people that wanted to do business. One was a baby shop. Baby carriage. They sold baby carriages, baby cradles, and cribs and stuff like that. But it was a good match because it's a very family-oriented part of town. But they just couldn't make a go at it. I think they lasted a couple of years, and then they just turned in the keys. There was one other business. I just can't remember what it was, but it also didn't last very long at all. And so here's my mom and dad. They're going, what are we going to do with this place? My dad was a contractor at that time. And I guess I was not the most obedient kid. So
very few of us
my mom and dad could put their heads together and say, let's do something. Let's open a hardware store because, it goes, hand in hand with his construction business. And at the same time, maybe Albert will take a liking to it and keep him out of trouble. And it worked,
And that's how Great Wall Hardware began?
Yes. And we started off as a 1,000 square foot store, and my dad got an architect, and we managed to build out the rest of the property. We took out the driveway, we took out the garage, we took out the backyard, and just built the whole thing, property line to property line. So we have the big store that we have now, and it was very shortly after that was built that the city put a moratorium and wouldn't allow you to build property line to property line anymore. You had to have setbacks,
Right.
which you can't, so you couldn't build like that anymore.
Interesting.
That was 1987, I think. We finally finished it.
Amazing. So tell me what happened last year. What happened to your store? And just for our listeners, where is the store located? What do you tell us about their store?
So our store, Great Wall Hardware, it's on Terraville Street, 1821 Terraville, between 28th and 29th Avenue. And last year, August 25th, Sunday night, an arson came in, didn't break in, just went right up to the front of the building and just lit the building on fire and walked away. That's what I caught on my security camera. Couldn't figure out why they did it. We still haven't caught him yet. He's a known arsonist, so they do know who he is, but they would arrest him on site, but they haven't found him yet. And
it was my understanding that your mother was also living in the building, correct?
I had my mom on the top floor, and I had two tenants on the middle floor. And so when the fire was fully blazing, both units were full of smoke. And the guys that were living downstairs, they were young, they could get out quick enough. But my mom was kind of stuck, disoriented. It was 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. So she was trying to find her way out of the building, and she was starting to lose her senses, is what she told me. She was just in shock. And that's when the fireman broke through the front door and saw her standing just 5 feet away from the front door. She couldn't see the front door.
Wow.
And so and then he grabbed her and took her downstairs.
Shout out to the firefighters.
Yeah, shout out to SFFD,
wow.
For sure.
That's a crazy story. And it sucks that we still don't know who did it and why, right?
Well, we know who did it.
I mean, we haven't caught him. Why. Right.
And
well, he's a serial arsonist from what the SFPD has said is correct.
They think he burned down Dragon Instant Printing, which was a store up on a mom and pop's printing shop next to where it meets at 15th and Terraville. They had him on camera too, and they think it's the same guy.
I mean, why? What's happening? Why are people coming now to the Sunset to try to burn down our small businesses? What changed? Was that something that happened before? Is this a new phenomenon? Can you tell me more about what changed?
That's when you got me, because I think random crimes like that are far and few between, thank God, but once in a while they happen. We've had fires in the Sunset, but they've always been the kitchen, someone left something, a stove going, an electrical panel, a short circuit, something like that. But once in a while, you get a fire. You get a fire like that. And there's, as far as I can recall, in recent history, there's 3 fires this way. My hardware store, the Dragon Instant Printing at 15th and Terraville, and there was a third one. It was a florist shop owned by a Hungarian lady on 20th and Irving, next to Hole in the Wall Pizza.
The flower shop. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. But let's switch to something happier.
Yeah, let's. Well, I mean, as a business owner, how has running a business in the Sunset District shaped your relationship with the community?
As a hardware store, I think it's different from other businesses, because people, when they come to a hardware store, a lot of times they come in with a problem, a leak, a paint job, change a switch or something like that. And a lot of times they need help, some advice. So I build up relationships that way in helping people out. I really, really enjoy doing that. It's more than just the money. It's also that, being in touch, helping someone solve a problem so they can make something better of their house or where they reside, adding spunk to their house by giving them a beautiful paint job. They get a beautiful paint job, they come to buy colors, and they get all the tools, and then I can give them advice how to cut a nice line on the wall, or what type of primers to use, caulking, all that kind of stuff. So it's more than just a retail experience where someone just walks in, sees something they like, and put it on the counter, and then out they go. That's kind of for me, that's like Target. You don't ask people much. You just go to what you want to get and you leave. A lot of times for hardware stores, people often ask advice, just they need some assistance. And that has put me in touch with my community, I think, just because we've had those conversations. Often those conversations lead to something else, more in-depth conversations. So then it becomes like a barber shop.
Right.
And people just come in, sometimes they don't even want to come in and buy anything. They just want to hang out. And
that's great.
That's the community that I feel like we formed at Great Wall. Having been there for so long, I think people just got used to the fact that we were always there, and you can always see my face, and we can always tell each other a good joke.
I think that's great, and I am certainly guilty of being part of that community. And thank you for the advice that you have given us for our own home. So I appreciate it.
Totally fine.
Yeah. So how did owning a business kind of relate to your work at the People of Parkside Sunset, which is a neighborhood merchant quarter?
I originally didn't want to go. I didn't want to be part of it. My mom, in a previous iteration of People of Parkside Sunset, which was called the Terraville Parkside Merchants Association, she was an officer for a while. I remembered the street was different. It was more white, so kind of not as ethnically diverse as it is now. And the president of the Merchants Association back then was a guy named George Zlatnich, who was also a hardware store owner. And he was president for Taraville's Merchants Association for like 20 years. And it was just a bunch of merchants getting together and having meetings, talking about issues, having guests come. But by the time it came to me, the Taraville Parkside Merchants Association was just a hollow shell of what it was before. There used to be 25, 30, 40 members in there. And I remember they used to hold meetings at the Tennessee Grill or the Irish Cultural Center. And then when I came along, it was at the police station. And there was 4 or 5 people sitting at a table. And that was it. And so at that time, Supervisor Carmen Chu said, Albert, you need to go there. You need to be part of this. You're the right fit. And I said, no. Well, I'm busy enough as it is, and I want my free time, and so on and so forth. I don't want to go. There's only a few people, and but she convinced me to go, and I gave it a try, and went to a few meetings. There wasn't much going on, but they were doing things like senior dance and trying to do like a what do you call it, a directory of merchants on a back then. Still trying to do a printed one versus something that you do online. And I just said, okay, I'll give this a try. I'll stick to it. I'll go to the meetings. And I think gradually we just started to do a little bit more. And I saw like the potential power of this organization. And I thought, you know what? We need to kind of pivot. And why don't we pivot to something a little bit more exciting? So we tried a music festival at the end of Taraville that was pretty good. Like we had hay bales out. We had 2 or 3 rock bands going. We even had a little bleacher stand for people to enjoy the music. And it was right next to the Riptide Bar. So there was drinks and there was food across the street. I was actually, and at that time it was Bashful.
What year was this?
2009, 2010. Gavin Newsom was mayor.
Okay.
He came.
Right.
And it was a great event, but it was so much work. Like 5 or 6 of us.
Right.
So it was so hard to pull off. And everyone was like, oh, what are you doing next year? But it was just, it was too much of a lift for an organization that small. And so we decided it was Carmen Chu's idea. Why don't we do a movies festival in the park?
And where's that located?
That's at 23rd and Taraville, next to the Parkside Library. And so we started our movie festival, held in October, and we had almost nobody show up, and the fog was heavy. It was not a good showing the first time, but I think like all things that get started, they're a little bit rough at the beginning. We started talking more to merchants, trying to rally and get more people in. And I don't exactly remember what... No, I do. I think what really brought people together was, at that time, the economy was going pretty well. This was after 2008. We were coming back. More restaurants and shops were coming down on Taraville Street and in San Francisco in general. But we got the Taraville Project, the beginning of it, and that really upset a lot of people. And when those people were upset, they needed somewhere to focus that anger, and feeling like they needed to have their voices heard. And somehow we became the center of that voice. And then our meetings started growing in popularity. 15 people would show up. 20 people would show up, 25, 30. And sometimes I would bring in, guests, I would bring in SFMTA, I would bring in our supervisors, I would bring in, DPW, all these people came in, and then everyone really wanted to know what was going on in Taraville.
And just for our listeners, the El Taraville project, it was a project that the SFMTA spearheaded to replace all of the things that you need for a Muni to run and underground for the El Taraville from basically West Portal all the way to the zoo. Right. And it was supposed to take like 3 years, ended up taking like 5 or longer.
It took about 5 years total with a 1 year break in between. Right. So 4 years actually. It was just that it was a big change on Taraville.
It's a huge change. There was a lot of construction. It was very disruptive to businesses. They took away parking. Everything was always just difficult to get to. And a lot of the small businesses suffered.
Yes. Those type of projects, those big projects actually put the spotlight on people at Parkside Sunset. So we started getting popular because we were just a go-to place to amplify your voice. Right. And Yumi Sam, she had done it for 7 years. She was like, I've had it. Albert, your secretary, I'm uplifting you to please be the president. I'm like, no. But eventually it was like I was already doing all the jobs.
You were doing the work anyway.
I was doing everything except title.
Okay. So you might as well have just taken the title too.
Yeah, 1 year that they voted me in. I think that was 2014. I became president. So I've been doing this 10 years.
Yeah, more than 10 years. Because you're still president. It's 2025.
Yeah. So we started to do things different. I started getting ideas for, like, let's say the movies in the coffin. At that time, Star Wars was still coming out with new movies. I got the idea that if we could get some funding, and we did finally get some money from the city, we could use that money to jazz up jazz up the Movies in McCoppin series. And so we started doing things like serving food. So I would buy food from the restaurants and give it away for free, let everybody sample the taste of Taravel. We started doing things like hiring entertainment that was associated with the movie we're showing that night. So I remember hiring stormtroopers for the Star Wars. So we had stormtroopers and rebel pilots, all, in their uniforms, come in and do photos with the kids. Everyone was just crazy about that. Hiring an actress that played Wonder Woman, or someone that came, we had NASA come when we did a movie about Hidden Figures.
Oh, right.
So we just really got into it. It was really fun, and we're continuing that tradition today. And we still, it's become a much bigger event than I ever expected, but I love it now.
Movies in McCoppin.
Yeah,
Are you doing it this October as well?
Oh, you bet. I haven't figured out what movies we're going to do, but it's going to be family-oriented movies. We'll have food again. We'll have entertainment again.
All right. Well, if this podcast is still happening, well, you can come back and tell us what movies you'll be featuring and any special guests you'll be bringing.
Absolutely.
It became like a fiscal sponsor for a lot of the other nonprofits or groups in the Sunset District. Tell me about how you became that role for everyone in the Sunset.
So it was just a few years before. So I'd say about 2019. I was approached by OEWD, and they said, you guys are really doing a great job out there in the Sunset. And they asked if we would, volunteer ourselves to be the fiscal sponsors of mini grants into the Sunset. So like to have money, to be in charge of a pocket of money that would be used to promote, let's say, Halloween or another block party event, or something that promoted some of the kids' safety in schools. Like you have a block party next to a school, and they would write up a grant proposal, and we would review it and okay it, and then give them the money so they can hire vendors and musicians and so forth to make an event. And this is one of the big pivotal changes that happened in the Sunset that started bringing eyes on us. We were no longer just a flyover neighborhood. It started becoming a destination. We started, because if people are coming and making happiness here and making events and causing crowds, and all of a sudden the Examiner, the Chronicle, Channel 2, Channel 7, Channel 5 are coming over, chronicling these events, that brought more merchants and investors that are willing to decide, hey, we're going to set up shop on Irving, we're going to set up shop on Taravel or Noriega, because they're seeing that there's buzz here. And it really had changed. I could honestly say after like 2015, 2016, we started seeing more people coming in.
Okay. And, 2015 is when the turning point started.
Right. I started seeing more businesses coming to the Sunset, more restaurants opening, more interesting specialty shops, because there is now so many restaurants on Taravel and Irving and Noriega, they could parse out into specialties. They didn't have to be general restaurants anymore. It's just only boba, only bolo bao, only egg tarts, only this, only that, and then there was enough crowd that there was enough business to do that.
Yeah, and we started seeing like Andy Town open up, and the outer Noriega merchants held like a concert every year, and they had some nice stores over there with Devil's Teeth and
Noriega Pizza. Custis Market was always crowded.
That's right.
And it was in their old location. It was just a lot of buzz there. And then, Hookfish,
right?
That great burrito and seafood place opened up.
Yeah.
They used to be a Cajun restaurant before that.
Oh, I didn't know
that. It was a secret little Cajun restaurant. I loved it. I don't remember the name of the restaurant anymore, but, the guy, I guess he had to throw in the towel. It was just too much for him.
Yeah.
It was just a mom and pop operation. I used to love going there to get some Cajun food, because where could you get it anywhere else in the city?
Right.
We had the pandemic, and it was really bad that first year because everybody was terrified. Wuhan, Manhattan, Italy. We thought we were the next one because we're a coastal city. We had an international airport. Someone with a bug could just fly in and mess it up for everybody, right? So everybody was scared. So everything got locked down. But and actually, Jessica, you and I remember doing merchant walks and going down the street and giving information, hand sanitizers, masks, and shields to people, putting up posters, just trying to protect the neighborhood. So thanks to you. I just remember that.
Yeah, it was a dark time.
It was a hard time, right? But I think somehow in that hard time, people got restless, and there was a lot of latent energy. And so people were doing projects at home like crazy because they had nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. But then through that, we actually spawned the farmers market.
Right.
The Outer Sunset Farmers Market.
Yes, which is now such a big staple.
Yeah, 37th and Ortega every Sunday.
Right.
And then we have Saturday events and Sunday events there. And that's created,
a lot of buzz in the neighborhood.
Yeah. So it gives people a lot to look forward to on the weekends.
And Pops was a big reason why the Outer Sunset Farmers Market even exists, right?
We worked with Sunset Mercantile.
Shout out to Angie.
Shout out to Angie Taylor. Awesome lady. She's incredible. We're so happy for that, for having our own farmers market. It's got its own flavor. It's got its own spin.
But it brings people out to the neighborhood. And I think it, to your point, really brings eyes. And people get to see how lovely the neighborhood can be.
My uncles and aunts and my mother and father managed to acquire these homes doing blue collar jobs. My uncle was a waiter. My other uncle was a waiter. And aunt was a seamstress. Very typical jobs back then. And they were able to buy a house in Richmond, raise their kids, go through private school on the backs of a waiter's pay.
It's amazing.
And you can't do that today.
You cannot do that today. So you have kids now, and they're also growing up in the Sunset District. What would you like the Sunset District to become for the future?
I like, I'm going to say that the status quo is actually not that bad right now. This is a very safe neighborhood. It's very family focused. We've got a lot of parks. We've got the beach. We've got
Golden Gate Park.
No, we got Golden Gate Park. We got all the little parks in between. Sunset Playground, West Sunset, Vicente Playground. We have all these playgrounds and places for the kids to enjoy themselves here, and lots of good schools. So, in fact, Lowell is just outside of our district.
No, it's actually now redistricted into our district.
Well, yes, you're right. But and then we have a golf course, which when the kids are going to get older, maybe they want to play golf. I don't know. But we have a lot of amenities here, and a lot of open space and room to breathe. You're not crowded in this neighborhood. So I would like to see that trend continue. I would like to see us not grow at a frenetic pace. I think that the pace that's going right now will keep Sunset, keep its personality, keep its vibe. I think that the Sunset in general is a very nice, mellow neighborhood. I think that's the right pace to live a comfortable life and not get too much into the rush of things. Which is, look, if I want to go downtown because I want to get crazy, I just hop on the bus or drive downtown and I can get as crazy as I like. But then when I want to go back home to peace and quiet, that's what I like about the Sunset. But now, on top of that, we have these events, and it's good too. But they're not every day. It's not every day. It's not going on all the time. And I don't want it to be that kind of a place in our neighborhood. Sure, we can have Harley Strictly Bluegrass and Outerlands, but it's only 2 times a year.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Albert, for joining us today. I think we're going to transition now to the trivia portion of our podcast. To play with us today, we have also invited Christian Croft.
Hi. Hello.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask 3 sunset-related trivia questions and give 3 possible answers for each. And you two will have to guess which one is correct, and whoever is right the quickest wins the point. And best out of 3 wins.
All right. What do I get?
Bragging rights.
Okay, bragging rights. Okay.
Yes. Maybe in the future we can upgrade depending on the sponsors we get. Before the Great Highway was officially named in the early 20th century, what was the original name of the coastal road that ran along Ocean Beach? All right. So the 3 answers are A, Seal Rock Drive, B, South Pacific Boulevard, or C, Esplanade.
Seal Rock.
Okay, well, I have no idea.
I'm going with Seal Rock.
Seal Rock.
That's my guess.
Christian, what would you pick?
Well, I'll also go with Seal Rock.
Well, both of you are incorrect because the answer is the Esplanade.
Esplanade. Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of Victorian, you know that?
The road Ocean Beach was historically called the Esplanade before it was officially designated the Great Highway.
Wow. Okay.
Next question. The Dolger home legacy. Developer Henry Dolger is credited with mass-producing homes that shaped the Sunset District. We kind of talked about that throughout the podcast. What unique feature did Dolger homes include that made them stand out? A, earthquake-resistant foundation design. B, built-in garages, which were uncommon at the time. Or C, custom tile work inside each home.
I'm going to go with the garages.
What was the other one? Garage, tile work, and what was that one?
Earthquake-resistant foundation design.
No, garage.
Garages? Both of you are correct. Yes, built-in garages were uncommon at the time. And it was meant to attract middle-class families who were starting to own cars.
Yes.
All right, last but not least, the mysterious lake beneath the sunset. There is a natural lake hidden beneath the sand dune. What is the name of the underground body of water? A, Laguna Honda. B, Sunset Springs. Or C, Pine Lake.
Oh, Pine Lake?
Isn't?
Oh, that's already here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Laguna Honda.
Sunset Springs.
And the answer goes to ding ding ding, Christian. Laguna Honda is the underground freshwater lake that extends beneath the sunset and is part of SF's hidden water system. Well, Christian, you win! Yay!
Power of guessing.
The power of guessing. Thanks for playing. that's it for the very first episode of the Sunset Connection. A huge thank you to Albert Chow, my husband, Christian, for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. If you want to be a guest on the show, or if you have a story to share, please email me at jessica.jasmine.ho@gmail.com. And you can also find this information in the show notes. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. That's all, folks.